I'm Roger Mudd, NBC News, Washington.
I'm Tom Brokaw, NBC News, New York.
The Reagan administration today won a major defense policy victory on the MX missile, a $17 billion project given up for dead just 6 months ago. Today, 239 House members voted to spend $625 million to get the MX started. The 53-vote margin made it look easy, but as Bob Kerr reports tonight, it wasn't.
The few women who got through a White House gate today to demonstrate against the arms race were less effective than officials inside, working the phones, lobbying hard for the MX. President Reagan's intense effort included submitting a piece for today's Washington Post so that Congress could read it before the vote. In it, he called the MX Peacekeeper, an incentive to peaceful negotiation. At a House hearing, Defense Secretary Weinberger was more blunt, warning against rejection of the MX.
I would think it would be a very dangerous tampering with our national security if it is not approved.
But Speaker O'Neill argued that approval of the MX would be even more dangerous.
And I think that there's no question that the MX would surpass anything that the Russians had, and the Russians then would try to surpass us. It's time that we stop this.
At stake in today's vote, $625 million to develop the least vulnerable base possible for the MX and for flight tests.
It is time today to put to rest this turkey, that's what it is, and let it rest once and for all.
Last year, the House voted against the MX, but now several former opponents believe President Reagan has a new commitment to arms control.
It is not just the MX in a basing mode. It's a combination of an MX, a small missile, a new arms control. This is a different thing.
I am not totally confident that this is the right answer, but I'm certain that rejection is the wrong one.
Those Democrats saw today's vote as a way to win more action from the president on arms control. But tonight's betting here among most Democrats is that the president will disappoint them. Bob Kerr, NBC News at the U.S. Capitol.
The president said he was deeply grateful to the 239 who voted yes today on MX. He said it was a wise and courageous step forward for America. The Senate is scheduled to vote early tomorrow afternoon, and that vote, too, is expected to be favorable. Tom?
It was a day of violence in Paris today, where thousands of students were in the streets once again protesting the government's proposals to tighten up education requirements. Jim Bitterman reports from Paris tonight.
Throughout the afternoon, the students were locked in battle with French riot police. Scores on both sides were injured. The security forces by firecrackers and paving stones hurled by the demonstrators. The demonstrators by the tear gas canisters fired by police. The battle seesawed back and forth over the elegant Alexander III Bridge. The protesters trying to make their way to the French National Assembly, which today began debating a law that will restrict educational options and force some students out of universities. As violent as today's clashes were, though, they might have been worse. Only last weekend, the government managed to negotiate a compromise with 35,000 striking medical students who had been leading opponents of the new education law. Jim Bitterman, NBC News, Paris.
In Belfast today, at least 12 people were injured when a car bomb was set off outside a police station in a Catholic neighborhood. No group thus far has claimed responsibility, but that police station has been the target of other attacks by the Irish Republican Army, which wants Northern Ireland to be independent of Great Britain. Police in Ireland and Northern Ireland now have abandoned their search for Shergar. That's the racehorse kidnapped more than 3 months ago and held for $3 million ransom. One officer in Northern Ireland said he believed the horse was killed when that ransom was not paid. During one of our earlier reports on Shergar, we said that the IRA had used kidnappings in the past to raise money through ransom. Well, a check of the record shows that while the IRA has been involved in kidnappings, it's not used them to raise money.
For your commitment to make the Alabama legislature a beacon of light and hope for the nation, you are to be highly commended.
Got it.
Alone at last.
But Phil, look.
Huh? Oh, that. Doris, I need the blimp behind me because...
Three's a crowd, Phil.
Phil may not know that Goodyear radials and their components have hundreds of quality checks behind them, but he sure likes the mileage he gets.
Doris will go a long way with the blimp behind us.
Get the blimp behind you. Come up to Goodyear.
I should have married Stanley. He just has a dog.
In the region of Boyacá in eastern Colombia, the pottery is made by hand and baked in the same ovens used by the ancient ancestors. It is a tradition centuries old. It is part of the heritage. The same heritage that has been passed to Juan Valdez. He picks his coffee as it has been picked for centuries, by hand, bean by bean, only when the time is best. It is no wonder that a country so rich in tradition grows the richest coffee in the world.
When I was looking for a small computer, I went to IBM because they know what a small, big company needs. I wanted data, word processing, and some word data processing. And they showed me a small computer to fit our budget. IBM even had a place to learn how to use it. That impressed us. And my good business sense even impressed my girlfriend, Charlotte.
IBM.
The Supreme Court ruled today that the Reagan administration had been wrong in what turned out to be one of its most politically damaging racial policies. The case involved tax breaks for schools practicing racial discrimination in the name of religion. The opinion was written by the Chief Justice. Dissenting was William Rehnquist. Here's Carl Stern.
The flags were at half-staff at Bob Jones University, where they called it the death of religious freedom. The fundamentalist college where blacks once were barred still prohibits interracial dating or marriage as contrary to the commands of the Bible, a policy which the Supreme Court ruled today justified taking away the school's tax benefits.
I'm very sad for America. I think we witnessed today the death of religious freedom murdered by the Supreme Court.
A year ago, President Reagan said Congress had never authorized the penalizing of church schools that discriminate. He ordered the Justice Department to reverse its position and back the schools. But today, the Supreme Court ruled the president was wrong. Chief Justice Burger saying congressional support of the Internal Revenue Service policy going back to 1970 was beyond doubt. The 8-1 ruling means that Bob Jones University and a second school in Goldsboro, North Carolina, will have to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars in payroll taxes. Gifts to the schools would no longer be tax deductible. At an afternoon function, the president said only, "We will obey the law." Attorney General Smith said the administration had not been mistaken in questioning the policy.
Well, it wasn't a matter of making a mistake. It was a matter of differences of opinion as to what the law required.
Now that the law is clear, the question is how vigorously will the administration enforce it? For example, there are believed to be hundreds of schools affiliated with churches who have used the church's exemption and never asked for their own. Those that discriminate could lose their tax benefits if Internal Revenue goes after them. Carl Stern, NBC News at the Supreme Court.
By an 11-7 vote, the Senate Finance Committee today did approve President Reagan's plan for private school tuition tax credits. This is the fourth year the committee has sent the bill to the floor only to have it die. The credit, up to $300 per child, would apply at private primary and secondary schools. Opponents of the tax credit say it would create a dual system of education. Tom?
Jesse Jackson is a man who likes to make a speech, and he has in churches, television studios, national political conventions, even on street corners. But today, Jackson had a new experience. He appeared before the state legislature in the birthplace of the Confederacy, Alabama. And David Hazinski is in Montgomery tonight.
The Reverend Jesse Jackson spoke to the Alabama legislature as a possible presidential candidate, but he said his appearance shows how far the civil rights movement has come.
We made a transition within the law through elections, not through revolution. Democracy has made room for all of us.
20 years ago, Jackson was one of the people who marched with Martin Luther King from Selma to Montgomery. The 1965 Voting Rights Act followed. Former Governor John Patterson, who was in office during the period, says Jackson's appearance was proof of the gains made by blacks.
They have tremendous political clout. It has to be contended with and reckoned with by the political parties.
Jackson wants to use the new voting power to give blacks a bigger role in government.
There must be a continuing commitment to share power and responsibility. We can no longer just accept integrated voting, but integrated slate making.
Jackson hopes to register more blacks in the South and get them to elect black candidates. He thinks that current election laws still discriminate against blacks, and he wants that changed. David Hazinski, NBC News, Montgomery, Alabama.
The National Weather Service said today that it seems like every river in the Mississippi Valley, from Indiana to Louisiana, is flooding. That appeared to be the case in the state of Mississippi, where water from the Pearl River poured over a levee near Jackson. About 6,000 people living in and around the state capital have been forced from their homes. There also have been reports of poisonous snakes being forced by the rising waters into some of those homes. An estimated 1 million acres of southern farmland now underwater. The nickel a gallon increase in gasoline taxes was only partly to blame, but consumer prices went up 0.6% last month, largely because of those higher gasoline prices and increased housing costs. Economists said they consider the price jump just temporary. They expect inflation to remain low for the rest of this year.
This may be the most important reason not to buy an ordinary luxury car, the extraordinary American Eagle, because Eagle is the only automobile that lets you switch into the security of full-time four-wheel drive. Yet Eagle rides with road-smoothing comfort, and its interior luxuries are second to none. The two-wheel, four-wheel drive Eagle from American Motors. After all, what good is luxury if it can't take you where you want to go?
Now for your arthritis. The aspirin you take once in 8 hours. Bayer timed release aspirin. One dose is 1,300 milligrams strong. Take it in the morning. It's timed released to give you long-lasting relief during the day. Bayer timed release works on minor arthritis pain fast, and it lasts. Take it at bedtime. It lets you sleep through the night. Now for your arthritis pain, the 8-hour aspirin. Bayer timed release aspirin.
Hello. I like this Remington microscreen rechargeable shaver so much, I bought the company. It shaves as close as a blade, or I'll give you your money back. The first microscreen is so thin it shaves incredibly close. The second even closer. And Remington's American-made. It costs less. Norelco's imported. It costs much more. The Remington microscreen rechargeable shaver shaves as close as a blade, or your money back.
And the Lady Remington rechargeable, the perfect gift. Shaves without a cord.
The federal government today tried to calm public fears about AIDS, acquired immune deficiency syndrome. The recently identified illness destroys the body's immunity system and has hit 1,450 Americans in the last 3 years and has killed 38% of them. Robert Hager has more.
In the face of unsettling reports, such as the New York sanitation man who seems to have AIDS but fits into none of the high-risk categories, or the New England Journal of Medicine article about women getting AIDS from male sexual partners, the government today tried to reassure people that there's no evidence AIDS is breaking out into the general population, or that it can be transmitted by only casual contact. Assistant Secretary for Health, Edward Brandt.
What's important is that there is no reason for panic among the general public, because at the present time, the only documented modes of transmission, only ones that we've been able to document, have either been through sexual contact, through blood, or through the sharing of needles or other implements put into the blood supply.
Brandt said still 71% of the 1,450 cases are homosexual or bisexual men with multiple sexual partners. 17% are addicts who inject drugs. 4% are recent Haitian immigrants. 1% are hemophiliacs who rely on transfusions. That leaves 6% who may be outside these groups. But the government says that figure doesn't seem to be growing, although research continues and studies are incomplete. And officials note that no health workers or lab technicians who've been around AIDS victims have contracted the disease. In some good news for one of the high-risk groups, hemophiliacs, the government today approved a new heat treatment for the blood used to transfuse them. That treatment seems to cook out infectious substances without harming the clotting agents. That could help protect hemophiliacs from whatever it is that causes AIDS, as well as from other blood-transmitted diseases such as hepatitis. Robert Hager, NBC News, Washington.
An investigator for the Nuclear Regulatory Commission said today that records of a leaky valve at the 3 Mile Island nuclear plant were falsified before the big 1979 accident. General Public Utilities, which operates 3 Mile Island, said it disagrees with the claims that records were falsified. The Justice Department has been investigating allegations of falsifying records since 1980. A report prepared by a veterans group for a House Veterans Affairs Subcommittee today said the government had been warned in 1946 that the health of 40,000 American servicemen could be jeopardized by radiation fallout at the South Pacific Bikini Atoll tests, but those warnings were ignored. Veterans groups are now asking for medical treatment and compensation for radiation exposure. Tom?
The space shuttle Enterprise was flown to France today to take part in that Paris air show, but the Enterprise was greeted coolly, at least by the French government, which refused to allow it to be flown over the Seine River through the middle of Paris. It must be said that the government normally bans flights over Paris for security reasons, but occasionally it does make exceptions for French airplanes. Some believe that the real problem is that the French don't want the Enterprise to upstage their own space program.
Pi equals to 3.14, R equals to 6 feet.
Freedom's the one that took the stick out of gum and puts the fresh in your breath. Yeah, freedom's the one that took the stick out of gum and puts the fresh in your breath. Yeah, freedom's the one.
Freedent gum not only won't stick to your dental work, it helps clean in between to freshen your breath while you chew.
Freedom's the one that took the stick out of gum and puts the fresh in your breath. Freedom's the one.
Freshen your breath with non-stick Freedent.
Excuse me, I'm supposed to be on that ship.
When do we leave?
Immediately. Wait, passenger. Anne.
Oh, I thought I'd lost you too. Did you find them?
No.
Is everything okay?
No, we lost our traveler's checks.
When things look bad, American Express looks good.
What kind were they?
American Express.
Relax. There's an American Express office in Nassau. We dock there tomorrow.
American Express has nearly 1,000 travel service officers to help you. Don't leave home without them.
When arthritis pain really gets to you, it's good to talk to a friend. I'd like to be that friend and tell you about Arthritis Pain Formula. It's very special, with the medicine doctors trust most for minor arthritis pain. And look, compared to regular strength pain relievers, Arthritis Pain Formula is stronger. It's microfined, with 2 buffers, and it's strong and effective. Get hours of relief with Arthritis Pain Formula. A very special medicine you can trust.
The National Education Association today struck back at President Reagan for saying that the American public hasn't been getting its money's worth when it comes to education. The NEA said that was a shocking and sad statement, and the president should not make such a judgment. The flap between the president and the NEA is the result of a real American dilemma. What to do about public education, especially the acute shortage of math and science teachers. Tonight, in part 2 of our report on this subject, we look at the money angle. Should good teachers, especially math and science teachers, get higher salaries? President Reagan says it's a local problem.
We spend more money per child for education than any other country in the world. We just haven't been getting our money's worth. And we won't until we reverse some of the dangerous trends of recent years. And that means restoring parents and local government to their rightful role in the educational process.
This is the local level. Elizabeth City, North Carolina, population 14,000. At the junior high school, math teacher Willie Weeks is retiring next month after 33 years. Earl White is hanging up his eraser after 37 years. And Elizabeth City school officials have not been able to hire qualified math teachers to replace them.
Whether it's 1 vacancy or 10 vacancies in the area of science and math, why we have problems in filling the vacancies.
Dr. Louis Branscombe, head of the National Science Board, chief scientist at IBM. He says schools must offer teachers more job satisfaction.
We also have to find a way to pay extra to attract people, pay competitively, in other words, to attract people into shortage categories.
More money for math and science teachers? Try to run that by an English teacher.
You really are treading on dangerous ground when you talk to an English teacher about somebody getting paid more than an English teacher. And of course, what is math and science if you have not trained people to see their worth as human beings?
Branscombe has still another idea.
I think we clearly have to reward merit in teaching. There's no state that does that yet, though there are many trying.
merit pay, more money for all excellent teachers, whatever their subject. But again, problems.
Because I don't know who could come up with any kind of objective testing. Because how do you test and judge inspiration?
Who's going to decide who's a good teacher and who's a poor teacher? Who decides that? You see, that would bring about favors. What if the principal doesn't like you? What if somebody doesn't like you?
Besides, where would that extra money come from? The county commission isn't inclined to give more to education.
The salary, in my opinion, should be the full responsibility for the state. And nobody wants to pay any more taxes. So we have to try to strike the happy medium of trying to keep the school people satisfied and also the taxpayer from becoming irate and starting tax revolt.
Idealistically, yes, I would like for the commissioners to provide for us a local supplement which would certainly turn the heads of all those that we would like to recruit. But realistically, I know we can't afford it, not at the local level.
But in the North Carolina legislature and in most other state capitals, there's a reluctance to raise taxes. So if the money needed to attract math and science teachers does not come from here, and if local politicians such as Commissioner Carver can't come up with the money, and if President Reagan says it is not a federal responsibility, where will schools get the Willie Weeks and the Earl Whites of the future? Well, so far, no state has developed a popular answer. Some are paying a small premium for science and math teachers. Others are considering tax credits for companies that hire science and math instructors during summer vacations. But no national consensus has developed. Dr. Branscombe, who's the head of the National Science Board, says the situation is very serious, and he says it will not go away suddenly. Roger?
The MX has become such a political symbol that many have lost sight of its role in America's arsenal. In his commentary tonight, John Chancellor discusses the U.S. defense system. John?
One of the arguments for the MX is that building it will be a demonstration of American will and purpose. The argument goes that if the American people don't have the gumption to keep their forces fully modernized, friends and enemies will see that as an American weakness. That argument leaves out one key fact. American forces now are as modern as they need to be. There has been steady modernization over the past decade. On the ground, the Minuteman III missiles have been given more accurate warheads. The Pershing II medium-range missile has been developed along with the ground-launched cruise missile. At sea, the old Polaris submarines are being replaced with Tridents, and the Tridents are being given new and super-accurate warheads. Sea-launched cruise missiles have been deployed. In the air, the B-1 bomber is in the works, and the old B-52s are being modernized to carry air-launched cruise missiles. Money is being spent on the new stealth bomber. All this adds up to a highly modern force of enormous power, paid for at great cost by taxpayers who did not complain. The President's Commission on Strategic Forces says that as of today, the country has adequate security, and there are plans to spend upward of $100 billion more on modernization in the next 4 years. If anyone believes that the American deterrent is second class, the facts don't bear that out. So, building the MX is not by itself a test of American will and resolve. The country has been showing will and resolve for years. It doesn't need the MX to prove it. Roger?
The Polish government today responded to NBC's report last night that the Polish consulate in Chicago is staffed by spies. An embassy spokesman said the report was an example of the espionage mania of the American media and was below his government's dignity to confirm or deny.
Hey, Tiger, if you want to go the distance, you need really tough paws. Uniroyal's all-weather Tiger Paw Plus. It gets a grip on that tough, twisting road and just eats up the miles. Tiger Paw Plus gets an average of 20% more mileage than Michelin X. That's what tests project. It laughs at the weather and keeps right on roaring. For mile after mile after mile. Uniroyal, we give you more to go on.
My favorite time of day is night. I love curling up with a rich cup of coffee. You think coffee and sleep don't mix? They do if it's High Point. It's decaffeinated, and the flavor's marvelous. You see, High Point has a special way of capturing flavor, deep brewed flavor. It's a coffee lover's dream.
Deep brewed flavor makes High Point the coffee lover's decaffeinated.
TV Guide says today provided the biggest and most pleasant surprise in our survey. The most enterprising, most alert, most newsy of the morning 3. Be the first to know. Weekday mornings on Today.
Like all actors, I have an agent. Sign that. And a business manager. Pay that. And a secretary. Don't lose that. Luckily, Canon's come up with personal cartridge copiers. You know the entire copying process is in here, so maintenance is as simple as this. And copies come in black, brown, or blue on plain paper. Finally, Canon PC-10 or PC-20 for the most important person in my life, me.
For information, call toll-free. Canon Personal Cartridge Copying. Plain and simple.
It's finally here. The Return of the Jedi, Part 3 of the Star Wars film phenomenon, which will open nationally tomorrow. And as Mike Jensen reports tonight, hundreds of companies are involved in the Jedi film. For them, the phrase, "May the Force be with you," means let the money roll in.
Actor Mark Hamill arriving for a preview showing of Return of the Jedi. Actress Carrie Fisher. Inside, an assault on the senses by this third in the Star Wars trilogy, the most expensive yet. $8 million worth of special effects alone. Carrie Fisher playing Princess Leia. Mark Hamill playing Luke Skywalker, discovering the truth about Darth Vader.
He's my father.
A high-speed chase through the Redwoods. The Star Wars series has been the most profitable in the history of movie making. The first two in the series, Star Wars and The Empire Strikes Back, have grossed about $900 million from ticket sales. But that's only the beginning. Merchandise tie-ins have brought an additional $2 billion in retail sales. And this third movie in the series, Return of the Jedi, is bringing with it the biggest merchandise and promotional blitz ever to come out of Hollywood. Kenner Products is introducing 17 new Jedi figures, 3 new spacecraft. It's spending $12 million to promote them. Lucasfilm, which produced Return of the Jedi, gets a royalty for every product tie-in. For records, cookies, books, video games, clothing, bubble bath, toothbrushes, portraits of Jabba the Hutt and the Ewoks, even a Darth Vader speakerphone.
Hello?
I'm calling about Return of the Jedi.
Burger King expects to sell 16 million Jedi glasses for 49 cents each and increase its sales by 7 to 10%.
Right now we have over $8 million in Return of the Jedi glasses in our warehouses, and we're spending about $7 million on the airwaves to promote the program.
And all over the country, Star Wars fans have been waiting in line for tickets to tomorrow's opening of Return of the Jedi, to be followed by an avalanche of new merchandise to feed their heroic fantasies. Mike Jensen, NBC News, New York.
Where do we go? I couldn't possibly, Joe.
That's Nightly News for this Tuesday night. I'm Tom Brokaw in New York.
I'm Roger Mudd in Washington. Good night from all of us at NBC News.